New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good morning, everyone. This is Rev Victoria Bomberry, and it is wonderful to be here with you this morning. I'm dressed in my flannel shirt. I'm looking like a lumberjack because I am in Southern California, and it is 37 degrees, which is really cold for us. So this is my cold weather garb. So it's great to see you this morning. And it's early here in California. It's 8 o'clock, and I've got my critters running around the house, so you may hear them from time to time. And if you do, I hope they don't bother you, and that you just accept them as a part of this environment and this habitat of this particular minister. You know, this morning we're starting off on our study for the year of this incredible Science of Mind textbook. And the textbook that we look at is the 1938 edition, that has been reprinted several times and continues to be, what we call our textbook. And, every time I start reading this book, I find things that jump out at me in a new and different way, and that spark my curiosity to go deeper into the teachings and even take a step further into inquiry that was begun by, it wasn't really begun by Ernest Holmes. He was part of a conversation, but he pulled things together in a way that was very compelling for many people who were considering new ideas in his time. And I think that when we see something that comes up, see some of the things that come up just in the very first paragraph of this chapter called The Thing Itself, we see that we're still dealing with those same ideas, those same issues, those same questions. And, they cause us some difficulty also in terms of generating conflict and discord and disharmony. So what I'm talking about right now is that in this very first paragraph, Ernest Holmes sets forth the project of religious science or science of mind. The thing itself. We all look forward to the day when science and religion shall walk hand in hand through the invisible to the invisible. Science knows nothing of opinion, but recognizes a government of law whose principles are universal. Yet any scientist who refuses to accept intangible values has no adequate basis for the values which he has already discovered. Okay, let's just take those first couple of sentences. Science knows nothing of opinion. Now, in other places in the textbook, the idea of opinion is talked about. Opinion is not the absolute truth, right? And science is a truth-seeking discipline. Religion, spirituality, is a truth-seeking discipline. Now, that being said, we know that there's different kinds of biases that come up. There's different kinds of things that are that can cloud and muddy the waters in both of those lines of inquiry. They can. That's just a given. We're human beings, and we have our opinions, which are not the truth, that are not grounded in universal law. And we are seeking that truth, which is universal and which is true no matter what. There's no changing of truth. Truth doesn't vacillate. Truth is the truth is the truth. Doesn't change. So we're looking at those universals. There's particulars that are, come to bear in certain areas that are well, what would we call them? We might call them maybe nominal truths, because I could say, this is what's happening to me right in this moment as my truth. Is that the truth? No, not necessarily. It's what's happening to me in this moment as an effect. It is not the truth. So what we are looking for in science and in religious science is the melding of these two truth-seeking disciplines, recognizing that there are laws that govern the universe. And we can agree, science is looking for laws that govern the universe. And, we can name things that you probably studied in school or are studying now in classes that you're taking that are laws that are universal, that are based in mathematics, are based in ways that we can measure things and visibly see things. And we also have that other inquiry, which is the intuitive. And that doesn't mean that they're separate, that they are mutually exclusive. They are not. Probably the most inspired, I'll use inspired, discoveries have come from tapping into something that is more than just measurement. It's tapping into that insight and inspiration that is that universal consciousness, that consciousness that goes beyond who we are. Now, he goes on to say that revelation must keep faith with reason and religion with law, while intuition is ever spreading its wings for greater flights, and science must justify faith in the invisible. Oh, okay. That is a mouthful. That is really gives us a lot to dive into, really. Revelation, and that revelation, I think, when I hear that word, that is something that is revealed, is a revealed truth. And it doesn't come from necessarily doing an experiment. It is something that is revealed as truth. When we step outside of just the material, when we move into that invisible, that's where revelation takes place. Now sometimes people will use the term, I got a download, right? In keeping with, our technological age of computers, I got a download. Well, that download is actually that revelation. It is something that is coming from the invisible into your individual consciousness. So that's where we get these greater flights. That's where we get these insights. This is where we get things that may be applicable to science. This revelation, oh, there is something that is happening here that we can look into more fully. This is a truth that we can apply to this particular situation, whatever it might be. It may be in finding treatments for cancer, right? To have a great insight from the invisible to establish new ways of treating cancer, right? For example. And, there's all kinds, we could use all kinds of examples of that revelation that has taken place that creates something new and different in the material manifest world. And, what Ernest Holmes talks a lot about bondage, right? And, of course, we have such a terrible history here in the United States. And let's really ground us that this is a philosophy that draws from Western philosophy. And it is very American in terms of how it is articulated. And it comes from a particular culture. When I said that there's particularities in cultures, we have that present in the Science of Mind textbook. Now, that doesn't mean that we throw it out. It's just something to be aware of. And it is something that we look at carefully to move forward in a way that doesn't get us stuck in the bondage, right? And he talks a lot about that, and that we can be bound by cultural things that are awful for us. And I think he uses that term bondage as an ancient term, but also as a term that in 1938 was still something that American culture was steeped in. Bondage, actually keeping people in bondage. And it's interesting to kind of think about it from that aspect, that this is something that is so present in the culture, in American culture. And Ernest Holmes is revealing this as something that humanity has to deal with. And I think that, whenever we see bondage in any capacity, it does inhibit the growth and the consciousness of the whole. So I hope that I'm keeping on track here, so that we're pulling this thread through and looking at this language and seeing how each part of this languaging speaks to the whole and our apprehension of truth. To suppose that, in quote from the second paragraph, to suppose that the creative intelligence of the universe would create humanity in bondage and leave it bound would dishonor the creative power, which we call God. To suppose that God could make a human as an individual without leaving the human to discover itself would be to suppose an impossibility. And I'm changing the language here because I think it's very important for us to recognize that we are also changing our insistence upon using a single male pronoun for the absolute, for that reality, the thing itself. So I'm changing that very consciously, and also recognizing that in Ernest Holmes' time, that was common. That also has created a certain kind of bondage and contributed to that bondage that he is speaking to right here. So, humanity is given that possibility of discovering itself. What an amazing thing, right? We're not automatons, we're not just programmed, right? to do the bidding of some outside force. That's not how humanity is set up. Humanity is set up to discover itself. That divine template was given in freedom, in perfection. In perfection, not imperfection, but in perfection. So that perfection is there. Humanity is free to discover itself. And that means the totality of what humanity is. Individuality must be spontaneous. It can never be automatic. And again, that speaks to this whole idea that this is happening. This is happening. This is life. This is life moving through us. It's spontaneous. It's not an automatic thing where we have our whole destiny laid out before us. This is what Ernest Holmes is talking about. There are other teachings that believe that destiny is already laid out, that there's no way that we have any kind of control or power over who we are and our decisions that we make. And, I think that it could be easy to fall into that because there are conditions that we live in. That's a reality. We live in certain kinds of conditions. And if we choose, we can allow those conditions to dictate what our lives might be. And we also can make choices about how we live within those conditions and transcend those conditions. So it is never automatic. It's always spontaneous. And I think it's very interesting that he uses the parable of the prodigal son to bring this home. The seed of freedom must be planted in the innermost being of humanity. But like the prodigal son, humanity must make the great discovery for himself. Okay, what did the prodigal son do? Prodigal son had everything, right? The prodigal son had everything that would possibly be needed for an opulent, joyful life. And yet he took off, right? And ended up just throwing away his inheritance, squandering his personal gifts, and doing things that were harmful to himself and others until he had a revelation. And that is the waking up point in the story, right? In this parable. Yes, we already have everything. But it's not automatic that we can see it. we experience this life, and we're free to experience this life so that we can have those revelations that will bring us back to a full understanding of who we are. It's sort of like, just the folk wisdom. You don't know what you have unless you lose it, right? That's the folk wisdom. You can have all kinds of blessings and not recognize it until you lose it. So that's sort of the idea here. However, it is much deeper than that as well, that we are living with blinders on. We're blind. We can't see beyond our small-mindedness. They're out, and I think this prodigal son parable is very American, right? And I think that culture has been exported globally now, where America has always been about more. We have to have more. And that's how success is measured, in fact, by more, the idea of more. And more can be have a generative effect. I want to have more love. I want to be more love. I want to be more open. Those kinds of things, right? Or it could be, I have to have more. I have to have more power. I have to have more goodies. I have to have more. So, there's that opportunity for us to choose what kind of revelation will come to us. This prodigal son had everything everything he could ever imagine, and yet he wanted more, and his more was not in alignment with his own good. So we're free to discover this for ourselves. We see abundance in the universe, and abundance is all around us, right? That's the good. And yet, humanity has a mindset very often of being weak, poor, and afraid, according to Ernest Holmes. And can we imagine that? Yeah, and I think about, people who I talk to oftentimes, and it's like, okay, the material good is all around them. The familia, oh, sorry, I'm speaking Spanish. The familial good is all around them. And yet, that is not enough. There's something that is missing. There's something that is seeking that more. And if that more is spirit, we go in one direction. If that more is escaping life, then we go into that dissolution. So Ernest Holmes says that Science of Mind deals with the questions of why humanity has this mindset of being weak, poor, and afraid. That's what Science of Mind deals with. How did we get there? Why did we go there? And, how do we move out of that? And Ernest Holmes says that humanity is seeking freedom. And, of course, we look all around the world and we can see that people are seeking better ways of life where they can take better care of themselves and their families. They're seeking freedom. They're seeking the freedom of movement, the freedom of being a part of the whole, having that freedom, right? And it's not spirit that is in the way. It is humanity that is barring the way. So what do we do about that? How do we change our minds so that we are allowing for that freedom for everyone? So he goes on to say that the study of science of mind is a study of first cause, spirit, mind, or that invisible essence, that ultimate stuff and intelligence from which everything comes, the power back of creation, the thing itself. So, when I first heard the thing itself, that kind of was like the thing itself. That's such a strange way of talking about spirit. And yet, as I thought about it, no, it's not really a strange way of talking about spirit. It's just one way because we're studying this, right? We're trying to come to some understanding of what this is. I tend to call it spirit, that ever creative force now is what I think of it as. Uh, and we use all of those attributes in religious science as qualities of spirit, love, harmony, peace, all of those kinds of things. We speak of as attributes of spirit, of this first cause. And this is what we're studying in religious science. What is it? How is the universe set up? And all of philosophy, I think there's two threads of philosophy that we have been dealing with, I think, in the 20th century and now moving into the 21st century is, is the universe a friendly place or is it not? Right? Is God good? Or is there any God at all? Right? Those are questions that philosophers have been dealing with. And, is this universe good? Is it a friendly place? Is all of this creation a friendly place? Now, Einstein, one of the best thinkers of the 20th century, had a revelation that yes, there is wholeness in the universe and it is a friendly place. That was his revelation. And I'm not quoting him exactly, but I'm paraphrasing what he said. It's a friendly place. There are laws. There are things that can be looked at as a unified theory of the cosmos that makes sense of how things are ordered. Things are ordered. Things behave according to law. Now, when we're talking about new discoveries in science, there's things that seem very, very paradoxical. And yet, every truth is a paradox. And we can get caught up in that. We can get caught and go down a rabbit hole because of that. Or we can accept that totality of that unification of the whole, right? That unity of the whole. So this is what we study in religious science. We are looking at first cause. What is that? A lot of times science doesn't go to first cause. They stop, right? This started and time started, and what is behind that? That is first cause. That is what we're still seeking to discover. And, you know, what I think what we love about Ernest Holmes is that he does have this sense of faith and certainty about spirit, about God. And he brings it down to very earthy terms. And he goes on to say it may seem as though in dealing with metaphysics, we're dealing with something that is too abstract. But what is tangible other than results? Principles are forever hidden from our eyes. We accept the deductions of science insofar as they are proved, and we recognize that they are built on immutable but invisible principles. So, yes, we have to have some sort of tangible proof, and that is our search for meaning as human beings. We search for that meaning. We are in search of those tangible proofs that will lead us to a more balanced way of life. We have that hunger in us. We have that curiosity. That's our hunger, is that curiosity to know the truth. And, this is a truth that I think that we don't think of. We may think about it, but we don't really look at what the practical application of it might be. Universal principles are never respecters of persons. The universe has no favorites. Therefore, it is written, and let him that thirst come, and whosoever will, let him take the water of life freely. And that's from Revelations 22:17. And of course, Ernest Holmes was versed in the Bible. And, so this is where he's drawing at this particular time. Words of wisdom is from the New Testament and Revelations. And, I think that we can all agree that universal principles are never respecters of persons if we look at things unconditioned, right? The sun shines on everybody. These things that are immutable, they're there. They're available to everyone. Now, when they're not available to everyone, and I'm going to bring it into practical terms, when we move into that human realm where we want to control and parse out what the availability and accessibility is to everyone, that's where we run into difficulty. The universal principle is that all of this abundance is for everyone. It's no respecter of persons. It's not because you have the best consciousness in the world, right? It's because it's available to everybody. It's not because you were born from the best family in the world. No, it's available to everyone. And we can go on and on down to all the list of criteria that we might want to look at as part of this conditioned world. No, this is for everyone. This was created for the free use of everyone, for the abundance of everyone, for the prosperity of everyone. It was given unconditionally to each and every creature, each and every human. And that is the truth. That's the truth of it. And I like that he says, the next heading is nothing supernatural about the study of life. No, it's not supernatural. We are looking at practical applications, and we are also studying, what is this? What is this all about? And he calls it spiritual psychology here. Isn't that interesting? Because oftentimes that gets lost, that there is this thing called spiritual psychology. And as a Native person, that is a big part of the healing process is spiritual psychology. And that was discovered by all of the wise people and the healers in the indigenous world, of which we were all a part at one point, right? And here is the spiritual psychology being called up and called forth. And we study life. That's what we do. We study life. How does this work? How do we fit in? Who are we? What is what is it? What is this thing called life? What is this thing called you? Right? This is what we study. We look deeply into those questions. And, again, looking at, we have a special focus on healing. That is a big part of how New Thought came into being, was through the healing, through the mind, right? And he goes on to say, we all know that many have been healed of physical disease through prayer. Let's analyze this. Why are some people healed through prayer while others are not? Remembering, of course, that the sun shines on everyone. There's, spirit is no respecter of persons. It's just there. It's there. It's for the use of everyone. And he goes on to say, can we believe that there is a God who picks out someone and says, I'll honor your prayer, but I don't think so much of Mr. So-and-so. And he says it's superstitious to believe that God will answer the prayer of one above another. Isn't that something? We have all the religions who want to be the chosen one. There's the chosen one kinds of religions. If you don't do it this way, then you are not chosen. Your prayers will not be answered. And he is just calling that out as flat out superstition. And what does he say is the cause of some prayers being answered and others not? Since some people have been healed through prayer, while others have not, the answer is not that God has responded to some and not to others, but that some have responded to God more than others. Their prayer, their thought, has responded by corresponding. The answer to prayer is in the prayer. But what is a prayer? A prayer is a movement of thought within the mind of the one praying along a definite line of meditation that is for a specific purpose. Okay. So, it boils down to, are we able to align with God? Are we able to receive that which is ours to receive from Spirit? Are we able to do that? Are we willing to do that? Or do we want to just stay in the suffering? And sometimes, I think that, And Ernest Holmes says this in other places. Sometimes, if there's a bodily healing that is requested, there may be so much damage at that point that it is, what happens is a spiritual healing. So healing is always taking place. And we are more than our bodies. So there is always a healing available to us. It is always there. It may not show up in the way that we're expecting or wanting, but it does show up. And, this is the part that I love, and this is what he is saying back in 1938 when this is published, before, because he's saying this before it was published. What is mind? No living human knows. We know a great deal about the mind, but not what it is. By mind, we mean consciousness. We are now using it. We cannot locate mind in the body. For while the body is a necessary vehicle for consciousness while we are here, it is not consciousness. We cannot isolate mind. And we know that there's all kinds of experiments that with brain neuroscience of, looking about how the body works. And yet there is no, and there is the belief that mind is located in the brain, right? And yet there's no proof of this at this point. I believe, as Ernest Holmes does, that mind is something that is much greater than this. The one mind is something that is greater than what is located in the brain. The brain is the mechanism, but mind and receiver, but the mind is something that is much larger than that. And we are getting at the end of our time, and I just want to say that this chapter has so much meat in it, really. But the main thing is that we are studying life. We are studying what is this thing called consciousness? What is consciousness? And, we put a high value on experience. How are we experiencing this? And through reflection and contemplation, we get to interrogate our experience, our perceptions, right? And we get to explore this inner realm in a very powerful way. And also pull from that practical ways of living that will alleviate our personal suffering and the suffering of others. That healing goes beyond the individual, although the individual is important. The healing is about healing the entirety of humanity. Now, Ernest Holmes focuses very much on the individual, and it was important at that time to think about individuals. And it was also had some ideas that were detrimental to the whole with individuality, that would, not look at our place as individual points of consciousness, but individual points of accumulation and of our desire, right? So we're coming out of that, I hope. That's my hope. And I think that's the promise of religious science, that we are moving into a more unified vision of reality, that we are one with the one. That is Ernest Holmes' message. We are one with the one. And he says, we shall never encompass God, and yet we shall always be in God and of God. and God is in us, and we are in God, which I think is one of the most powerful truths that we can realize. We can say the words, and they sound pretty, but until we realize that and live it, we will still be in bondage. We will still be tied to suffering. When we live as those divine beings, we release all suffering and we seek to end the suffering of all beings. And that is a truth that I know. And Ernest Holmes points us in that direction, as many other enlightened ones have. So everyone, stay with us. We're going into this textbook, and there's so much here. And Ernest Holmes is pointing the way. And Ernest Holmes, I know, would just be so thrilled if we pick these things up and we take them even further, right? If we explore them deeper, and if we're open. What Ernest Holmes meant by being open at the top, he meant be open to spirit, be open to those revelations of spirit, be open at the top. So everyone, have a good week. Do your spiritual practice and just live in joy.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Holmes Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network. Positively